We are happy to invite President of the Uzhgorod National University, Volodymyr Smolenko, for the welcome word.
Дякую, дорогі друзі. Я не знаю, що треба англійською, але я частково скажу українською, частково англійською. Перш за все, слава Україні! Шановні друзі, дорогі наші учасники конференції, я хочу всіх привітати з початком конференції, оскільки це дуже серйозний, важливий захід, який, про що ми з гордістю говоримо і з задоволенням говоримо, який буде проводитися на, як зараз звикли говорити, на площадці Ужгородського національного університету, і ми дуже задоволені цим. Я впевнений в тому, що впродовж цих 5 днів ви отримаєте дуже хорошу інформацію, отримаєте нові знання з питань еволюційної біології. Я, чесно кажучи, продивився програму, і я би, якщо б мав час, я сам медик, я нейрохірург за фахом, я би, чесно кажучи, ці 5 днів би посидів тут, тому що є дуже багато питань, які є цікавими, там, допустимо, питання там резистентності антибіотиків, але є стійкості до антибіотикотерапії, але є такі питання загальні, які цікаво було би теж поглибити свої знання просто як людині. Так що я вам заздрю. Заздрю особливо тим десь 40 учасникам, які є в місті Ужгороді. І наскільки я розумію, що десь біля 160 ще, 150-160 прибули до нас, то будуть приймати участь у режимі онлайн, так я розумію. Так що гарного вам отримання нових знань, гарного вам навчання. І хочу сказати, що дуже важливим є те, що ви знаходитеся в місті Ужгороді, трошки познайомтеся з містом. На жаль, погода буде не дуже хороша, така пасмурна, але тим не менше якийсь час можна буде провести і поза, звичайно, вже після програми, поза стінами нашого університету. Звичайно, ми всі прекрасно розуміємо, що ми знаходимося у відносно більш спокійному регіоні України завдяки нашим Збройним силам, завдяки тому, що наші Збройні сили можуть забезпечити більш спокійне перебування вас, наше перебування тут і забезпечити, власне кажучи, цей весь процес отримання нових знань, освіти, оскільки вам, молоді, відбудовувати нашу країну, нашу прекрасну країну. Тому не сумуйте, перспектива у всіх вас прекрасна, і ми знаємо, що ми вистоїмо, оскільки ми це робили уже робимо впродовж майже 3 років, і перемога і переможний мир буде за нами. Also, I would like to express my gratitude and to say a few words to our foreign colleagues. Thank you very much for coming to us, to your courage, I would say, because we are on the territory of Ukraine, which is in the status of war with Russia, with aggressor from our former neighbor, but not good neighbor. So thank you very much for coming to us, and thank you very much for giving the opportunity to this youth, to this our younger colleagues, to get a new knowledge about evolutionary. I don't know how it will be in English correctly. Evolutionary biology. Yes. So thank you very much. Дякую всім нашим викладачам також. And I hope you will enjoy your time here with this perfect young generation, talking with them and discussing with them different issues of the biology and of common life. Thank you very much. Дякую.
Thank you very much for the welcome words. And now we will have a welcome letter from the president of Kharkiv National University, and Natalia Volkova will read this letter.
Hello, everybody. Well, I will read the letter from our administration and academic community of Karazin University. On behalf of the administration and academic community of Karazin Kharkiv National University, I congratulate you on the start of the school. Evolutionary biology is the basis of understanding and the complexity and interconnections in the world of life. And it is due to your work and perseverance that progress is being made in this field. Your interest in evolutionary biology studies is an important step toward deepening scientific knowledge, promoting innovation, and addressing the most pressing biological challenges of our time. Karazin Kharkiv National University is proud to support initiatives that bring together passionate researchers, teachers, and students united by the desire to learn the secrets of life. This school is not only an opportunity to exchange ideas and deepen your knowledge, but also a platform for collaboration, to get inspired and to get ready for new scientific discoveries. We are confident that your participation in this program will bring fruitful discussions, new insights, and important contacts. We urge you to approach this experience with enthusiasm and openness, taking advantage of the opportunity to learn from outstanding experts and like-minded people. Thank you for your dedication to science and your contribution to preserving the rich traditions of academic and scientific community in Ukraine and around the world. Together, we will continue to strengthen the importance of science and its transformative power for humanity. We wish you a successful and inspiring journey at the Ukrainian School in Evolutionary Biology. Signed by Vice Rector for Research and Teaching of Karazin Kharkiv National University, Anton Panteleimon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now Yaroslava Hasen is the Dean of School of Biology, Uzhhorod National University, will say welcome words to all of you.
Шановні учасники Української школи з еволюційної біології, по-перше, рада вітати вас в Ужгороді, місто, яке під час війни стало не лише прихистком для багатьох мешканців нашої країни, але й для ідей. Власне, тому ми сьогодні в стінах Ужгородського національного університету, який приймає вас, як учасників цієї школи, важливої наукової події, яка покликана спільно розвивати і поглиблювати знання з еволюційної біології. Школа – це не тільки про професійне зростання. Школа – це і про те, щоб стати частинкою спільноти, яка прагне до інновацій і якихось відкриттів в науці. Впродовж 5 днів ви станете учасниками її і зможете поглибити своє знання з найактуальніших питань з еволюційної біології, ознайомитись з передовими методиками, також попрактикувати на воркшопах. Ну і що саме найцінніше, це познайомитись і поспілкуватись з видатними вченими в цій сфері з багатьох країн світу. Це і Штати, і Великобританія, Ірландія, Нідерланди, Франція, Польща, Румунія, Японія, ну і, звичайно, Україна. Треба сказати, що ті учасники, які перебувають тут сьогодні в межах Ужгородського національного університету, я переконана, що матимуть змогу подивитися і переконати, що Ужгородський національний університет – це сучасний науковий заклад, який динамічно розвивається, а місто Ужгород – європейське, гостинне і затишне містечко. А ті учасники, які сьогодні поза межами університету і перебувають з нами онлайн, я їх щиро запрошую в наше місто, звичайно, на наш факультет, і сподіваюся, що разом працюючи над цією темою, ми зможемо зробити цю школу традиційною і щорічною. Я щиро бажаю вам цікавого навчання, гарних лекторів, гарних ідей, цікавих знайомств. І нехай ця школа стане таким маленьким кроком у ваших майбутніх наукових досягненнях. To our guests who are only learning Ukraine, I want to say welcome everyone. We are very happy to have you with us today here. Let's interact, learn and do research together. Всім нам успіхів і слава Україні!
Thank you very much for such nice words and for welcome words. And now, Vice Dean of School of Biology, Karazin National University of Kharkiv, will say welcome words to all of us. Дмитро Шабанов.
Добрий день. Тут мав би бути наш декан, але сьогодні у Харкові великі свята, 220 років, як створено наш університет, створено відразу як класичний. І все ж таки його задача забезпечувати процес там. Я дуже радий опинитися в такому місці. Я дуже радий, що розвиваються нові форми роботи, і це все ж таки, хоча вже вами апробована, але відносно нова для нашої країни форма. Я хотів дві думки донести. Перша думка, що в погані часи, а зараз погані часи, займатися такими речами, як еволюційна біологія, це щастя, це насолода. І я не знаю, я в усякому разі приїхав для того, щоб отримати задоволення від того фаху, від тих проблем, які я обрав як головні для себе в своєму житті. І друге, нас намагаються знищити. Звісно, головна задача, яку вирішує зараз наша країна, це спротив збройний. І лише завдяки тому, що хтось тримає кордони, ми можемо тут сидіти. Міста Шисин, до речі, доброволець. А другий еволюційний біолог. Коли нас намагаються знищити, крім іншого, ми маємо втратити можливість до тієї роботи, якою ми тут займаємося. І попри те, що наша діяльність вторинна у порівнянні з військовим спротивом, займатися своєю справою, будувати плани, доводити до кінця – це також форма нашої стійкості, це також те, чим ми маємо займатися. І я дуже хотів би, щоб те, що тут буде відбуватися, стало частинкою забезпечення нами нашого нормального професійного життя. І дуже радий всіх бачити. Сподіваюсь на те, що ця школа буде успішною.
Thank you very much for the welcome words. And now I want to introduce you the school, general concept, and what we will do here in Uzhgorod all week long. So the Ukrainian School of Evolutionary Biology 2025 will open. Our main idea was to connect people and to give information about current and modern development of evolutionary biology in the world. So it was our main goal to organize this school this year. The school is organized by two universities. I will try to do this. By two universities, but first, before this, I want to take your attention that evolutionary biology had a big development in Ukraine in previous time. We really didn't choose time for the school because of this, but Alexei Boldarev remind our Ukrainian community that in 24th of January was date of birth of Teodosy Dobzhansky, who was a Ukrainian evolutionary biologist. And for now, we can say that our school is really close to the date of his birth, and we think it's really symbolic date, and we are happy to do this now. And the school is organized by two universities, Karazin National University of Kharkiv, and this university where we are physically now, Uzhhorod National University. But not only such universities make this possible, many other people support and involved in the organization of the school. In the organizers level, it's two universities, as I told, and also organization in France, INRA and laboratory CBGP, where I'm working, and also Auckland University and New Zealand organization. You can see all banners in the slide. And also, we are really happy to say thank you our sponsors. Our school supported by ESEB. ESEB is European European Society of Evolutionary Biologists, and their initiative JB supported the school, and because of this, we can be here. Too. And also the school was supported by the platform Bioinformatics for Ukraine. We have great support from Auckland University Lab of Genomics. And we are really happy to say thank you all such organizations for this. And you can see in the slide our organizing team. Because of all such people, the school is possible. All of them made great contribution to the school, and we are happy to welcome you. I'm Svetlana Serga, and you can, during the school, you can ask questions, you can interact with me where you want, when you want, and we can discuss many things together. And also Natalia Volkova, Vice Dean of School of Biology, Karazin, Kharkiv National University, great made contribution to the organization. And you can see Natalia here too. Volodymyr Mirutenko Vice Dean of School of Biology of Uzhhorod National University is here too, and he will tell you about all organizational things slightly later. And Alexander Mastrenko, who is working in New Zealand, and unfortunately he can't be in Uzhhorod now, but he is online and he wants to say welcome words to you. Чи можемо ми Олександра вивести на екран? Yes, and he will describe what he wants to tell. Alexander, you can say we can see you, but not here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, you are.
Okay, so you can hear me now. Okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's welcome to the school. So my name is Alexander, and so I'm a postdoc in Royal Netherlands Institute for Marine Research. And so my daily work is about microbiome. So we investigate how microbes form symbiotic interactions. But one of main interests is, of course, evolutionary biology in general. And so it's been a pleasure to be part of organizers' team. It was really exciting to look for speakers, to prioritize which topics to include. We are looking forward for entire school, for you people to interact with each other. If you are interested in a topic, please email us, text us, find us. We are all available for interactions, for advice, for anything. Yeah, and well, again, overall, we are looking forward to rebuild this community. We're hoping you can make friends, foster collaborations, spread the knowledge, and in general, long-term goal is to keep this event going in one or another way. Hopefully, we would be able to organize similar things once every year or 2 years, but also long-term goal is again to have something going all the time. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are happy to see you from New Zealand. And of course, it would be better if you can come personally. Thank you. And also, we are very welcome to listen Taras Alexic. He can join us personally too, unfortunately, but he can interact with us in Zoom. So Taras, are you here?
Yes. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes. You are in the
Okay.
main.
Дякую, дякую. Шановні колеги, дорогі друзі, гості, я жалкую, що ні я, ні мій колега Вальтер Вольсбергер з Оклендського університету та Bioinformatics for Ukraine, які є співорганізаторами цього заходу, не можемо бути присутніми. Але дякуємо нашим колегам, Світлана, які в залі є, які змогли все так гарно організувати, незважаючи ні на що. I am glad to welcome all of you today to the commencement of the Ukrainian School of Evolutionary Biology within the walls of my alma mater, my favorite university in the world, Uzhhorod National University. Despite the difficult times we're starting this important event that unites scientists from different parts of Ukraine and all over the world. And this welcome is to everyone who's here in person and virtually, but I would like to speak a little bit in Ukrainian. Радий ще раз вітати вас сьогодні на відкритті нашої школи. В моїй альма-матер, і попри складні часи і цю іноземну навалу, ми розпочинаємо цю важливу подію, яка була моєю мрією дуже довго, і яка об'єднує науковців з різних куточків України, які сюди приїхали, а також за кордону. Но перше, що я хочу підкреслити, це значущість того, що ми проводимо саме в Україні, тому що це прояв нездоланного духу тих, хто продовжує творити, досліджувати та навчати попри війну. І наша мета – це виховати нове покоління вчених, які понесуть естафету наукових традицій від наших попередників і далі після нас. Не забувайте слова видатного українського еволюційного біолога, про якого Світлана згадала, Теодосія Добжанського, який дуже-дуже відомий в Сполучених Штатах Америки, який насправді пояснив американцям, навіщо потрібна еволюційна біологія. І він наголошував, що ніщо в біології не робить сенсу, крім як у світлі еволюції. Сьогодні в добу геноміки ці слова звучать як ніколи актуальніше. Сучасні технології не тільки підтвердили вагомість теорії еволюції, а також відкрили нові виклики, які наші покоління мають усвідомити та по можливості вирішувати. Еволюційний підхід – це ключ для розуміння різноманіття життя, видів, популяцій і навіть людського організму. Без еволюційних принципів, без розуміння генетичного дрейфу, наприклад, нам складно порозуміти, як можна зберегти рідкісні та зникаючі види. Без розуміння природнього добору не можна пояснити виникнення нових видів. Але еволюція – це не тільки теорія, але й практичні інструменти. Як ректор згадав, у медицині та громадському здоров'ї еволюційні принципи особливо важливі. Рідкісні хвороби стають зрозумілі тільки через призму мутації і дрейфу, а поширені захворювання тільки через міграцію і природній добір. Без розуміння еволюції годі зрозуміти зльоти і падіння епідемії ковіду, або грипу, роботу антибіотиків, або лікування раку. Все, що я перерахував, неможливо порозуміти без розуміння принципів еволюції. Тобто еволюційна теорія – це не тільки теоретична наука, яку вивчають в університеті для задоволення, як ми говоримо, тому що це задоволення для нас, але воно величезне має практичне застосування. І це треба порозуміти не тільки нам, але тим людям, які керують країнами. Наша робота як науковців – доносити до суспільства те, що підтверджено дослідженнями, реальність. В той час, коли інтернет заповнений вигадками та теоріями змови, ми покликані пояснювати і навчати, щоб ключові рішення та закони в Україні і в інших країнах ухвалювалися на основі надійної науки, а не фантазій і різних політичних гасел. Саме тому те, що ми започатковуємо сьогодні, є надзвичайно важливим. Я переконаний, що це має довготривалі наслідки не тільки для науки, а для охорони здоров'я і для розвитку промисловості в Україні. Особливо приємно, що це все відбувається в моєму рідному місті. Але я щиро радий вітати друзів і колег з Харкова, Києва, Дніпра і інших міст, як великих, так і маленьких по всій Україні та і за межами. Також дякую міжнародним викладачам, які погодилися навчати без будь-якої фінансової вигоди, лише тому, що вони вірять у важливість цієї справи. Тому, друзі, давайте налаштовуємося на плідну роботу, давайте будемо вчитися, обмінюватися ідеями, мріяти, творити разом. Сьогодні ми починаємо добру традицію, яка служитиме нам, нашій країні та й цілому світові. Нехай цей початок стане віхою в історії успіху української науки. Слава Україні! Glory to Ukraine! Дякую.
Thank you very much for such nice words and good description of the school and of future plans. It's very important. And unfortunately, other members of organizing committee can't come, and because of great difference in time, Walter can't join us, but they made a big job to organize such school. They are really involved in the organization, so we want to tell you about them. Walter made a great contribution. Also, Tatiana Baranik and Sergei Sidorovsky from Kharkiv National University made this. And also Yaroslava Hasinets, she already told welcome words, and Yuri Hamula, Dean of School of Biology from Kharkiv. So it's a team, and now we want to describe some organization moments to do school more clear for you, and to tell what we will do and how we will do this, and what we expect from you, and what we will do. What's this? So we will have 5 days program of the school, and we have 26 speakers. Some of them will present their lecturers here in person. Some will present in Zoom, and all of you already have program of the school. So you can look and be present in the lectures which you want, and to listen. And also, yes, and people in Zoom can join us too for all activities of the school, except coffee breaks and lunches and breakfast and dinners. And we will not have such activities online. All other activities will be open for all people who want to join. And as people told, all the members of organizing committee told that we expect interactions from students, and our main goal was to improve evolutionary biology in Ukraine. And we think that the best way to do is to give direct interaction between students and teachers. And so we will try to do this as much as we can during the school. So some life hacks for students. Do not be shy and interact with teachers during coffee breaks, during all events, and also after each lecture, we will have time for questions and discussion. And please be free to discuss things, to ask questions, even if you think the question is not good. All questions are good and important for discussion and important for lectures. So be free to interact. And the other thing is language. We have near 20% of application from non-Ukrainian people. So it's better to interact in English. In this case, all people can understand you. But if you can't, you can do this in Ukrainian. And also we will have 3 lectures in Ukrainian with English slides. So we'll try to speak English as more as we can, but Ukrainian also is accepted. And like in case of Taras, maybe more people want just to speak Ukrainian, because we can do this now in Ukraine. And now I want to give word to Vladislav Mirutenko, and he will describe in details about organizational things here in place in Uzhhorod.
Там наступний, напевно, да? Слайд. Ще раз всім доброго дня. Я вас ознайомлю з технічною інформацією щодо розміщення. Ви бачите, що в приміщенні ректорату працює безплатний Wi-Fi. За посиланням можна фрі, ви можете долучитися. Також трошки про загальні такі розклади протягом наших сесійних днів. Отже, це стосується переважно учасників, студентів, аспірантів. Ви будете проживати в хостелі, і дехто з вас, напевно, вже поселився, так? Є такі, що поселилися? Є. Більша частина ще, напевно, під'їде сьогодні і завтра вранці сплануйте собі, будь ласка, час так, щоб о 8-й годині ви могли з хостела вирушити, і наша колега Аліна Гукливська буде вас чекати біля хостелу і проведе до місця, де у вас буде запланований сніданок. Це зовсім поруч, по дорозі до ректорату. Сніданок орієнтовно, як ви бачите, буде з 8:20 до 8:45. Після цього попрошу не затримуватися і переходити сюди, в цю будівлю, в ректорат для лекцій. Тобто з 9-ї години щодня, ви в програмі бачили, розпочинаються лекційні сесії. Ланч, обід буде тут неподалеку. Ми зараз теж туди всі попрямуємо на обід, це зовсім поруч. Після ланча повертаємося знову сюди на лекції. Вечері будуть відбуватися на іншій локації. Якщо лекційні сесії заплановані орієнтовно до 19-ї години, то десь півгодини нам потрібно буде для того, щоб перейти на вечерю. Це за адресою вулиця Шумна, 31, але за бажанням ми, звісно, вас супроводимо перший день, а далі ви вже будете, думаю, сподіваюся, орієнтуватися. Цей розклад працює сьогодні і ті дні, коли, як ви бачите, немає воркшопів. Частково воркшопи будуть відбуватися, а це вівторок, четверг, в приміщенні біологічного факультету. І якщо ви подивитеся ту карту, схему, яка вам була скинута, там зеленим кружечком позначено біологічний факультет. Він десь так в сторону вашого хостела, тобто він ближче до хостела, ніж ректорат. Тобто частина воркшопів буде відбуватися на біологічному факультеті, але частина воркшопів буде відбуватися тут. Зокрема, біоінформатичний з Вальтером Вольбергом буде і вівторок, і в четвер тут. Тому ми ще детально це десь завтра, напевно, так, Світлана, обговоримо, хто де залишається на воркшопи, хто куди прямує. Тобто, хто на біоінформатичний записався, ті нікуди не будуть рухатися з цього приміщення, ці будуть знаходитися тут. Хто на інші воркшопи, будуть переходити на біологічний і потім сюди повертатися. Якщо будуть у вас виникати якісь технічні питання, будь ласка, звертайтеся або до мене, або до пані Аліни. Добре, домовилися. Дякую.
Так, дякую за детальний опис того, що буде відбуватися саме тут. Ну і ви можете звертатися у будь-якому випадку до всіх організаторів за допомогою, або якщо потрібно щось питати. Крім того, нагадую, що у нас є група у WhatsApp, і ви там досить активно пишете, тобто це теж дуже добре для інтеракції. Або хтось, якщо загубився, то ви можете теж писати у цю групу, і там ми зможемо вам швидко відповісти. І, можливо, у когось є організаційні запитання. Так. Ми можемо оплатити тільки 4 ночі. Ще є якісь організаційні запитання? Немає. Ну, ми кожного разу будемо нагадувати, що буде далі. Список лекцій у вас є. Тобто, я думаю, що у цьому все буде добре у цих моментах. Okay, and I think I will say from all organizing committee that we want to say thank you to Army Forces of Ukraine, because only because of them we can be now in safe place in Uzhhorod. And now our country is not in good situation, and we have very dangerous things in our country, and we want to say thank you to people who protect us, and because of whom we can still come to safe place to do science, to teach, and young people can learn things and can interact with people with different people from with people from abroad. So thank you for this. And so our school is open now. Many thanks for all participants who can come, and all lecturers, all speakers who can give their talks in next days. And now I think our first lecture would be at 11:30. So we will have small break, and after this we will start our program. В кінці, що немає.
Hello.
Готовність 1 хвилина. Dear colleagues, it's time to start our first lecture for today. It will be represented by Laurent Loison. He's from France. He's a historian of science. He lives in Paris. And his research focuses on rise of biology as an autonomous science in the course of 19th and 20th century. He has recently published a book devoted to the history of the concept and of plasticity within Darwinian evolution. Hello, Laurent.
Hello.
We are very happy that you involved in our Ukrainian School of Evolutionary Biology. All words to you, please, you are welcome.
Thank you. It's, of course, a pleasure for me to be with you today, not physically, but at least intellectually. To start my presentation, I will need to have access to share documents. Okay, so I have it. Perfect. Okay, just a moment, please. Okay, so now I guess that you see my my slides. Yeah, I can see on the screen that it is okay. And could you hear me well? Is it okay if I speak like this?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk of the Ukrainian contribution to evolutionary biology regarding a very specific aspect regarding what is called today plasticity first evolution. It is the fact that plasticity could be an important driver in adaptive evolution, despite the fact that inheritance of acquired characters, it means Lamarckism, is not efficient, not seen as an efficient mechanism anymore. So this might seem to be a very, very specific aspect to the history of evolutionary theory, but I am to show you that this part of the debate was quite important and still is quite important, and that the Ukrainian contribution might have been quite significant. This is an ongoing work. This is the beginning of the work, of my work about the Ukrainian contribution. So I have many questions and only a few answers. And as you will see, I still may need some help from Ukrainian scholars in order to access to some papers of the late 1930s. So first of all, I owe special thanks to several colleagues. Nicolas Rode, who approximately 2 years ago put me in contact with some Ukrainian colleagues. Svitlana Serga, who was very important in the help that she provides to me in order to be in contact with colleagues in Kharkiv that were able to send me some texts, especially Natalia Volkova and Serge Utevsky, who directly provided to me very important text in Ukrainian, especially by Efim Lukin, zoologist Efim Lukin. And part of my presentation will be based on what they were able to send me. So many thanks to them. And last but not least, Lina Didoa. She's a student in philosophy in Paris at the Sorbonne. She is one of my students. And she, this year, I taught a class on the history of genetics in general. And I learned that she is Ukrainian and she wanted to become a translator. And happily enough, she was able to translate one of the papers that Natalia and Serge were able to send me. And as I will try to show in the second part of my presentation, this paper, the content, the conceptual content of this paper might have been tremendously important in the history of evolutionary biology. So why this work on plasticity first evolution? Mainly because of the hype that surrounded this topic for at least 20 years. Think, for instance, of the book published in 2010 by Massimo Pigliucci and Gert B. Muller, Evolution, the Extended Synthesis, the project of a new evolutionary synthesis. And partly this project was based on the possible significance of plasticity for adaptive evolution. So here in white you have the central core of Darwinism. In gray you have the modern synthesis of the 40s and 50s, the standard modern synthesis. And here you have possibly new mechanisms that would be involved in a new version, in an extended version of the evolutionary synthesis. Yeah, okay. And in these mechanisms, you have plasticity, accommodation, niche construction, all mechanisms that are now involved in what is called plasticity first evolution. Think of the work of colleague David Fenning in the US, who him and his colleague were able to show that this plasticity first evolution might be responsible for at least some cases of adaptive evolution, for instance, in frogs. Okay, so there was a kind of renewal of this debate regarding the causal role of plasticity in Darwinian evolution. And 7 years ago, approximately 7 years ago, this was the starting point of my work as a historian of biology. And I decided to trace back the entire history of plasticity first evolution within a Darwinian framework. And a few weeks ago, I published a book on that, titled Beyond Lamarckism, Plasticity in Darwinian Evolution from the late 19th century until the 70s, when once again the debate started to disappear within evolutionary biology until approximately 20 years ago. Okay, so I'm not going to talk at all about the Ukrainian contribution to the history of evolutionary biology in general. I'm just going to focus on this aspect of plasticity first evolution. And of course, there is much more to say about the Ukrainian contribution in general for the evolutionary theory. For the better with Theodosius Dobzhansky, and for the worst with Trofim Lysenko. Dobzhansky's contribution is quite well known today. As you may already know, he was responsible mainly for the rise of what is called the modern synthesis, the new version of Darwinism, where Darwinism eventually met Mendelian genetics. He published already in the late 30s the first edition of his very big book, Genetics and the Origin of Species. And if you want to learn more about the contribution of Dobzhansky, you can see, for instance, a book published 30 years ago by historian Mark Adams, who unfortunately passed away a few weeks ago. This collective work is titled The Evolution of Theodosius Dobzhansky. And at that time, in the early 90s, this work was made possible also thanks to the fact that because of the fall of USSR, new archives where Western scholars could access to new archives that were stored partly in Moscow and partly in Kiev. So this book is a very complete survey of the significance of the work of Dobzhansky for the evolutionary theory. I'm not going to talk either of Ivan Schmalhausen's tremendously important contribution to plasticity first, to the theory of plasticity first evolution, because I won't have time to do that. But of course, Schmalhausen's contribution was very, very important and was known in the West thanks to the translation of his big book, Factors of Evolution, The Theory of Stabilizing Selection. This book was written during World War II in quite difficult conditions, then published in Russian in 1946 and translated into English in 1949, thanks to the support of Theodosius Dobzhansky. Thanks to other colleagues, I was able to access to his first big paper on stabilizing selection, published in Russian already in 1941. And thanks to another colleague, she translated this paper to me. So the conceptual content of this paper is extensively discussed in my book already. But I won't have the time today to discuss it into detail. Today, I'm going to focus exclusively on the contribution of zoologist Efim Lukin, a contemporary of Schmalhausen, a contemporary of Dobzhansky, and also a contemporary of Conrad Waddington in England. And Lukin's contribution to plasticity first evolution is not well known, mostly because it published only in Russian and Ukrainian, and of course because of the rise of Lysenkoism in the late 40s, and this was detrimental to also to his career. And it seems to me that especially 5 publications were especially important in the late 30s and early 40s. On this 5 publication, thanks to colleagues, I was able to access to the first 3, 2 papers on this big book on Darwinism and geographic regularities. But I'm still looking at the final 2. The first one is the one that was translated by my student from Ukrainian to English. So a few weeks ago, I was able to access to the content of this paper, and I'm still looking for the last 2 publications. So if among you some are able to access to these 2 papers, I would be very, very interested in having them. They were published, I guess, in Ukrainian, or maybe in Russian, I don't know, in a journal called the Journal of General Biology. The one was in 1942, and the second in 1985, when he drew a comparison between his understanding and Schmalhausen theory. And to have access to these 2 papers would be very, very important for my work. So if it might be possible for some of you, I would be very happy to have these 2 papers. Okay, so first, before emphasizing Lukin's contribution, I need to depict the entire picture of the history of plasticity first evolution within a Darwinian framework. I'm not going to sum up the entire content of my book, but only two aspects that I think are important in order to better understand what Lukin was doing in the late 30s. So my first point is that there were two different concepts of plasticity first evolution during the entire 20th century and already in the late 19th century. First, a concept that could be called organic selection, following James Mark Baldwin phrasing. And this time, plasticity was seen important because of its interaction with natural selection. People who were interested in organic selection promoted the issue of the evolutionary why. Why plasticity is important with regard to natural selection. Why plasticity could avoid extinction when populations are facing new environmental disturbances, and eventually why mutation are selected in the long term, in the long run. So for scientists interested in this concept of plasticity first evolution, what was at the foreground was the interaction between plasticity and selective pressure in an ecological perspective. I won't be able to detail all these works, but I'm just willing to give a general picture in order to better understand what Lukin did in the late 30s and early 40s. So the most commonly used name at that time for this type of understanding was Baldwin term, organic selection. And Baldwin was indeed the only scientist in the late 19th century who proposed a new term to emphasize this possibly new evolutionary mechanism. So within organic selection, there are still two ways of understanding the interaction between plasticity and traditional natural selection. First is organic selection sense one, OS1. And here you have a quote, for instance, by Baldwin in the early 20th century. Baldwin said that the present writer considered this function to be probably a case in which natural selection has put a premium upon the acquisition of adjustment, it means plasticity, which would keep a creature alive to avoid extinction and give the species time to acquire the congenital mechanism for the same function. This meant, of course, genetic mutation, illustrating what is called below organic selection. So basically, organic selection for all these people worked in three steps. First step, population was able to survive thanks to phenotypic plasticity. Second step, there was time for new genetic mutation to occur thanks to this survival effect of phenotypic plasticity. And eventually, natural selection was responsible for the accumulation of appropriate genetic mutation. So in the end, the phenotype was no longer plastic. There was a genetic fixation of the adaptive phenotype. This conception was resurrected a few years ago, and think, for instance, of this issue of Science, Buying Time, and I think that the phrase buying time is very appropriate in order to emphasize what is at stake with this mechanism. So this is the buying time hypothesis of the first meaning of the concept of organic selection. But this was not the only one. There were others understanding of plasticity first evolution at that time, and another one was and still is well less known. And this other concept of organic selection was not developed by Baldwin or by Lloyd Morgan in England and in the US, but was developed by another scientist. And this concept, I will term it organic selection sense 2. And the main scientist involved in the rise of this second concept of organic selection was American naturalist John T. Gulick. Well, today Gulick is mostly completely forgotten, but he was tremendously important in the late 19th and early 20th century because of his understanding of geographic variation and of the importance of chance in speciation. And for instance, Ernst Mayr, one of the great architects of the modern synthesis, he relied heavily on Gulick's work in order to develop his concept of the founding effect in evolutionary theory. So John T. Gulick was quite known in the first half of the 20th century. And in his 1905 book, he developed another concept of plasticity first evolution. And for instance, he said that by means of accommodation, birds and beasts determine their relation to the environment, and so determine the kind of selection to which their and their descendants are thereafter subjected. So this time, plasticity was not responsible for survival of a population that would face dramatic changes in its environment, but plasticity would be important in creating a new ecology, in allowing population to travel to new environments and to colonize these new environments. So this time, plasticity creates a new ecology. This would be step one in the process. Then, because of that, new selective pressures were the consequence of these plastic abilities. And in the end, natural selection would select the appropriate genetic mutation that corresponds to this new adaptive landscape in order to of course, this wording is completely anachronistic, and this was not the wording used by Gulick and his colleagues at that time. So two different concepts of organic selection, and this second concept is very, very close to our modern understanding of niche construction theory. So in many respects, Gulick anticipated for decades the modern concept of niche construction that was elaborated only in the late 80s and especially since the 90s, so very, very recently. He developed that in a book with a very strange title. I won't have time to explain the title. The book was called Evolution, Racial and Habitudinal and published in 1905. Okay, so two different concepts of organic selection where plasticity was important because it was supposed to interact directly with natural selection in at least two different ways. But there was another concept in the 20th century of plasticity first evolution. This time, plasticity first evolution was linked not directly to natural selection, but to embryological development. And this time, the main issue was not the evolutionary why, but the developmental how. So what was important was the interaction between plasticity and, let's say, the genetic architecture of the phenotype. But of course, again, this is anachronistic wording in order to speed up only. And the most common wording was Waddington genetic assimilation. So the two main biologists that were important in the rise of the other concept of plasticity first evolution were Waddington in England, in Edinburgh, and Schmalhausen first in Kiev, but especially in Moscow when he arrived in Moscow in the second half of the 30s. Waddington's work is quite well known still today. So here you have his very famous experiment on Drosophila wings in the early 50s, performed in Edinburgh. And Waddington he and his colleague, they selected various strands of Drosophila, and because of a heat shock, they were able to produce phenotypic abnormalities, and because of a process of artificial selection, they were able to make this new plastic phenotype genetically fixed quite rapidly indeed with this kind of selective process. And what is especially important is that Waddington explained this formation of a new phenotype by the complete reconfiguration of what he called the epigenetic landscape. So here at the bottom of the picture, you have two different issues in the epigenetic landscape. The normal phenotype at the beginning of the experiment is supposed to be X, but there are other alternative phenotypes that could be produced thanks to plasticity. If, for example, heat shock is performed during the early stages of the embryological development. This time you will form not the standard phenotype, but a new phenotype, Y. And then, because of selection, progressively the topography of the epigenetic landscape will be transformed, and you will form constitutively, even with no heat shock, the new phenotype, what was previously the new phenotype, Y, and now this phenotype has become the usual phenotype that will be produced whatever the environment during embryogenesis. So this was called genetic assimilation by Waddington, and this mechanism was quite close to what Schmalhausen called stabilizing selection. Okay, but I won't have time to go into detail. And this was explained at the level of a population by other quantitative geneticists in Edinburgh. And this is another representation of genetic assimilation that I publish in my book. Okay, so two different concepts of plasticity first evolution. And this is the first aspect of this history that is very important. And the second aspect is that this history is especially discontinuous. During years, these ideas were no more discussed within evolutionary theory. So, two different concepts, the blue one, organic selection, plasticity and selective pressure, the green one, genetic assimilation, plasticity and development. So the first debate, the seminal debate, took place around 1900 by various people, of course, James Mark Baldwin, but also Conway Long Morgan in England, American paleontologist Henry Osborn, in Germany August Weismann, and eventually John T. Gulick, who I presented a few minutes ago. Then, during approximately 20 years, there was some kind of eclipse of plasticity first evolution within genetics and within Darwinian evolutionary theory. And it was only around the mid-30s that a second debate progressively took shape. And then, after the late 60s, a second eclipse was at stake until the first years of the 20th century, of the 21st century. In this second debate, various people were quite important Conrad Waddington, of course, in England, Raymond Vass in France, William Thorpe, also in England. But in USSR, many people, many scientists were interested in plasticity first evolution. For instance, Georgi Goz, who published several papers in English, so the content of what he did was accessible quite easily to me, but also Valentin Kipetchnikov, who published partly in Russian and partly in English. Nomenko, he published a very important paper related where he developed what he did as an experimentalist in Moscow in the very first years of the 40s. And again, I was able to access to this publication in Russian and to make it translated into English. And eventually, the main topic of what I want to say today was most probably FM looking, and looking might have been a missing link between the first debate and the second debate, because he was maybe the first to publish on organic selection in 36, before Goz, before Kipetchnikov, and even before Schmalhausen. Schmalhausen, it seems to me, as far as I know today, became interested in plasticity first evolution only in 38. It means 2 years after Looking's first publication. And what is of possible important interest for history is the link between Gulick's book, 1905 book, and what happened in USSR in the late 30s, because all these biologists, they all directly quoted Gulick's book. So one question is to understand to what extent Gulick was known before all these people developed their own research program, or did they first reinvented something close to organic selection, and then only secondarily they quoted Gulick, Baldwin, and the like? So this is an open question. For instance, here you have a paper by Kipetchnikov, and of course, Gulick is quoted, but this is also true for Schmalhausen, who on several important places directly quoted Gulick, and this was also true for FM Looking. So this is his big book, his 1940 book on Darwinism and geographic regularities in variation of organism. And Gulick book is also a reference in the final bibliography of the book. So, given all that, what could have been FM Looking's contribution? Could have been Looking a missing link in this quite difficult, complex, and discontinuous history within evolutionary theory? So to answer this question, for now, I have only one paper, the 36th paper. So this paper was published in the proceedings of Kharkiv University in 36. So this is the PDF that I was able to access in Ukrainian, and this text was translated thanks to my student Lina Didova just before Christmas. So for me, it was a kind of Christmas gift, and I was very happy to be able to access to the content of this text on the causes of the substitution of non-hereditary variation by hereditary ones in the process of organic evolution from the point of view of selection theory. So to me, there are at least four main conclusions that I can draw from the content of this first publication by Looking. Key lessons from this article. So first, there is in this paper, there is no mention at all of the biologists responsible for the first concept of organic selection. Baldwin, Gulick, and others, they are not quoted at all. No reference, either explicit or implicit. So it seems that Looking was able to think of this mechanism on its own with no reference to the seminal debate. And this is not completely a surprise because many people in the late 30s and early 40s first developed a concept close to organic selection, not because they were aware of the work of, for instance, James Mark Baldwin, but because of their own involvement in the evolutionary theory. And it was only secondarily that they discovered that already 40 years before, other biologists developed mechanisms quite close to their own models. This was true, for instance, also for Conrad Waddington. In the late 30s and early 40s, he was not at all aware of what, for instance, Baldwin did 40 years ago. So it seems that the same pattern could be applied to the case of FM looking, and at least on the basis of this first paper, it can be said that looking was not aware of the first seminal debate about organic selection. So this is the first lesson. Second lesson, and this is linked to the first, the evolutionary role of plasticity is considered in an openly ecological framework. Looking was not thinking as a developmental biologist, but he was interested in ecological issue reflection on the concept of morph, of ecotypes, parallelism between phenotypic variation and genetic mutation, and the like. And this was again quite classical at that time, especially within the Russian-speaking biology and Ukrainian-speaking biology. And in contrast to what was happening in the West, Eastern scholars were much more interested in ecological issues, were on the side of Western biologists. The issues of genetics and developmental biology was at the foreground. Third key lesson is that the central issue for looking was to explain why this process can take place because of natural selection. Just look at the title from the point of view of selection theory. And he was especially interested in the way selection could account for the genetic fixation of the adaptive phenotype. Take, for instance, this quote. The previous necessary brief overview shows that ecological and geographical forms are genetically fixed. Inevitably, the question arises, if many non-hereditary changes are very similar to hereditary changes on the same characters, if organisms are capable of responding in a number of cases to external factors with adaptive non-hereditary change, and if finally purely phenotypic forms adapted to their living condition occasionally occurred in nature, then why, in the process of evolution, does the replacement of non-hereditary changes by hereditary ones occur in the vast majority of cases? So, like Baldwin, but I guess without any understanding of, without noticing that Baldwin did the same 40 years ago, looking was interested in the issue of the evolutionary why natural selection selected genetic mutation that were parallel to plastic variation. It means that if you take this three-step process of organic selection, looking was especially interested in the third step, given that plasticity could perform adaptive phenotype, why in the long run did natural selection would select appropriate genetic mutation? Why population are not staying plastic, and why did natural selection occur at all. So he was especially interested in this first step, and this again was something quite common in Ukraine and in Russia at that time. Other biologists were also interested in this issue, and it was also the case of Georgy Gause exactly at the same period in the late 30s and early 40s. And again, the issue of the why does selection dismiss non-hereditary changes, since it assesses the organism based only on its phenotype, nor its genotype? These questions are somehow neglected by Darwinists said to us. Okay, a last key lesson from this first paper is that not only did Looking emphasize the issue of the why, but he also tried to answer this question. And speculatively, he suggested three main reasons that would be responsible for the natural selection of the appropriate genetic variation. Reason number one was developmental precocity. According to him, it would be advantageous for a trait to be, for a character to be present earlier in life. And this means that this character could not be formed by reaction to the environment. And it means that it could not be plastic. It had to be genetically fixed. So this was reason number one. Reason number two is that for Looking, genetically fixed trait could be more adaptive than plastic trait because they could be optimized by natural selection much more than plastic phenotypes. So this would be reason number two. But I guess the most interesting reason is the last one, reason number three, because Looking thought that it could be it could enhance fitness to have something close to what would be called developmental canalization by Conrad Waddington a few years after that. So this paper by Looking was published in 1936, and Waddington started to elaborate the concept of developmental canalization 4 years after Looking's first publication in the early 30s in his very famous book, Organizers and Genes. And then the term canalization was coined in 1942 by Waddington in a paper that he published in Nature. But already in 1936, Looking thought of something close to developmental canalization. Here you have the entire quote. We have often emphasized in this article that hereditary characters are more independent of the influence of the external environment. And he thought that this autonomy of character development would be intrinsically valued by natural selection because it would enhance fitness. So autonomy of character development is quite close, of course, not as precise, but quite close to Waddington's canalization. And autonomy of development was also at that time the wording used by Schmalhausen about the consequences of stabilizing selection. And the idea was already there somehow in Looking first paper in 1936. Okay, so my point is that, of course, at that stage, this is a work, an ongoing work, because my interpretation is only based on one paper by Looking. So I need to access to much more of what he did in the late 30s and early 40s. But it could be the case that Looking work was responsible for the revival of plasticity first evolution in USSR, because his work was quite well was known by others scholars, Gauss, Kepechnikov, Nomenko, and of course Schmalhausen. Schmalhausen quoted a lot looking, and he tried to develop another concept of plasticity first evolution, but he was fully aware of what looking did in Kharkiv in the second half of the 30s. So looking might have been the starting point of this renewal. And it could be the case that looking reinvented the concept of organic selection from scratch, because at least in 36, it seems that he was not aware of what Gulick and what Baldwin did half a century before. And it might be the case that it was only few years after, when he wrote his big book on evolution, that he became aware of what had been done in the West in the around 1900. So many thanks for your attention. It was again an honor to be with you this morning and to contribute to highlight the Ukrainian contribution to the evolutionary theory. And again, if there is any chance that you could access these last two papers by looking. So I guess with 4 papers and his 40 book, this would be enough material for me to have a better understanding of what happened between Kharkiv, Kiev, and Moscow at the time of the renewal of organic selection, at the time of the rise of the second debate about plasticity first evolution within Darwinian theory. So I hope I was not too quick on some issues. Thank you again, and it will be my pleasure to answer some questions if you have any. Thank you.
Firstly, about this book of 1942, you can access it through a link that posted in Zoom chat.
This paper, you mean the 42 paper?
Yes, non-hereditary adaptive changes in organisms.
And could you send me directly the link by email so I could access the paper?
You can copy this link from Zoom chat.
Okay, okay, thank you. I haven't seen that before. Okay, perfect. Oh, great. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Maybe we have questions, audience. Svetlana, we have question.
Good morning. Thank you for your report. Yeah, I have question about like in your presentation we have slide with 2 sides with on the one side of their plasticity, this organic selection, and the other side. And my question is, there is a balance between these two conception and with the genetic assimilation and sorry and in their between this plasticity in which answer the question why and the answer how, and in long-term evolutionary trajectories, and maybe there are systems where one dominated from the other. Like.
So, is your question, are these two plasticity first evolution concepts sharply different, or is there any intersection between these two explanation of plasticity first evolution? Would that be a correct translation of your question?
With about intersection of plasticity first and
And
evolutionary why and the issue of development, how this two.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a very good question, a very complex question also. Basically, these two evolutionary mechanisms are quite truly different. But there are some cases that are in between these two mechanisms. So the difference is not an absolute one. There are overlap between, it could exist overlaps between organic selection and genetic assimilation. Let's start by genetic assimilation. The idea of genetic assimilation is that the very basis of this evolutionary mechanism is that embryological development is to some extent canalized, and this and development could absorb some genetic mutation and some a minimal degree of environmental disturbance. And because development is canalized, then genetic assimilation could occur. It means that a certain form of natural selection, and Waddington called this form of natural selection canalizing selection. Schmalhausen called this form of natural selection stabilizing selection. So let's use Schmalhausen wording. Stabilizing selection would be responsible for the progressive autonomization of development, and in the end, it will lead to the production of a fully assimilated phenotype with no need at all for the environment to be responsible for the formation of the character. Okay, so this was basically genetic assimilation. And in this theoretical framework, the first plastic formation of the phenotype, and in the end, the fully genetic assimilated phenotype, they are both the product of the same developmental path. But at the beginning of the event, the developmental path is not yet fully canalized. It means that the environment still have to causally produce the adaptive phenotype, whereas in the end, this is not needed anymore, because thanks to the work of stabilizing selection, the developmental path is now fully genetically encoded. So this is what is represented here with Waddington, the epigenetic landscape. At the beginning, this path is not yet canalized, and you need a perturbation by the environment to produce this new phenotype, whereas in the end, this is not anymore necessary. Okay, so it means that it is the same path of embryological development that is responsible first for the plastic phenotype, and in the end for the constitutive phenotype. Whereas for organic selection, it is not at all the case. For organic selection, what is important is not development, but ecology. At the beginning, plasticity is important because it enables a population to survive drastic changes in its environment, okay? And as long as these new selective pressures are maintained, then plasticity is needed for survival. But then, because of new genetic mutation, a new phenotype is progressively able to cope with these drastic changes. And this new phenotype is not necessarily from an embryological point of view, is not necessarily the same that in the end will be selected by natural selection. It means that in the framework of organic selection, there is no connection between initial plastic characters from a developmental point of view and the final adaptation that eventually gave access to a better fitness than what plasticity did at first. So this is a very complex issue, and what I was able to say in only a few minutes was to picture very roughly what is at stake. But these two processes are different evolutionary mechanisms that could be related. In some cases, there is a direct connection between organic selection and genetic assimilation. But there are other cases for which these two mechanisms should be considered like two quite sharply distinct evolutionary mechanisms. Okay, I hope I was clear enough. It's quite difficult to explain this with no slides to support my explanation. But again, thank you for your question. It is a very important question. And this is a question that I developed much more in my book.
Thank you. We have one more question.
Thank you very much for the lecture. Sorry, I actually got late on it, but anyway. So my question was related to actually this kind of duality of selection, and I'm wondering if we can actually bridge these two opposites by this idea that actually selection chooses not really on phenotypes, but the developmental trajectories, which are like the successions of phenotypes. So these are so there's no antithesis between these two, because organisms are not just like a snapshots, because like organisms are not snapshots, phenotypical snapshots, right? But they are like certain successions of phenotypes, right? Certain trajectories. Yeah, like does it make sense or not?
Yeah, another aspect that is important in order to better understand this distinction is the complexity of the genetic architecture of the phenotype. The more the architecture of the phenotype is complex, and the more genetic assimilation might be responsible for this kind of plasticity first evolution. In other contexts with much simpler organisms, like for instance unicells, or with phenotypes whose genetic architecture are much more simple, then more oftenly you will have a process like organic selection that will take place. Because in this case, it is very easy to think of a single point mutation that could mimic good enough the initial plastic phenotype, and this point mutation could arise and later be selected. So this will be typically the logic of organic selection, and this works quite well for phenotypes that are not too difficult to obtain from a developmental point of view. But the more you think of a complex phenotype, the more you think in terms of something like an epigenetic landscape, and the more you will be on this side of this conceptual distinction. So another aspect that is tremendously important is the genetic architecture of the phenotype itself. And funny enough, Waddington himself struggled with that, because in some of his experiments, one mutation was enough to produce the assimilated phenotype in Drosophillas. So in the early 50s, a series of experiments that he devoted to genetic assimilation in Drosophila, at least part of his results were fully compatible with organic selection. And this was a deception to him, because he was especially involved in promoting the fact that genetic assimilation was something different from organic selection. So there is again, there are overlaps between these two processes.
Thank you. We have 3 questions in Zoom. Igor was the first. Igor Zeverin, please.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for a very interesting lecture. And my question. Schmalhausen emphasized that plasticity needs previously established hereditary norm of reaction. And so from this standpoint, plasticity is not first, but at least second and even third. Can you agree that the ideas of Baldwin, Lloyd Morgan, Lukin, Kirpichnikov, early Schmalhausen is the question, and the ideas of the theory of stabilizing selection of Schmalhausen is the answer. And that this answer is closer to ideas of modern synthesis and the ideas of, for example, Dobzhansky, than to the ideas of Baldwin and Lloyd Morgan.
Okay, many thanks for your very stimulating question. Okay, so first, yes, it's completely true that for Schmalhausen, plasticity was itself in the history of life on Earth, a secondary adaptation of organisms. And the more organisms are evolved, the more they are able to be plastic and to be adaptively plastic. So his entire view of the evolutionary process was grounded on this idea that plasticity is not inherent to living matter, but was itself the product of natural selection. This being said, this was already the case for Baldwin at around 1900. In 1902, Baldwin published a very difficult book to read that he called Development and Evolution. And already in this book, Baldwin saw plasticity as an evolved property of living beings. So I guess none of these scientists from the late 19th century to the mid 20th century, none of them saw plasticity as a primary dimension of living beings. Most of them emphasize the fact that plasticity is an evolved property of living beings. So I would disagree with the fact that Baldwin asked the question and Schmalhausen gave the answer, because in my view, they were each other, they reflected quite the same way about plasticity. And it was true that Waddington tried to dismiss organic selection on the basis that in this model, plasticity was somehow taken for granted. And here I do not share this reading of history by Waddington. And you have to remember that Waddington was especially concerned in making his case for priority. So he tried the best he could to say, okay, genetic assimilation is something completely new, and I did something more important than Schmalhausen did. And genetic assimilation could not at all be compared to organic selection. It is a much more refined view of evolution. And in my view, Waddington went much too far in this direction, and organic selection was much more complex than what he thought in the early 50s, when he discovered that, okay, Baldwin and others already reflected upon this issue. But again, your question is tremendously important, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting. I understand.
The next question comes from Serge Zhutevsky, please.
Laurent, thank you very much for your lecture. We have correspondent, and
Yeah.
I sent you some of the articles you asked me, and you used them. I'm really happy. And I have a comment. I have a comment about Professor Lukin. I think, and you told us that he developed his theory of plasticity first independently, and I think this is because of his a great intuition. He could do many things intuitively, and he did it very very well. And in that time when he worked on plasticity first theory, he also worked on the common fish leech, and he found that fish leeches invaded from the sea to the fresh waters, and he did it also independently and intuitively. And this theory of the origin of fish leeches or freshwater fish leeches was confirmed by molecular methods only recently.
Okay.
So he had a greatest capability of intuition, and he can do many things independently using his imagination, maybe, and intuition. I think, and maybe I'm the only person here who met Professor Lukin alive. I saw him. I saw him, and yes, I saw him, and I remember him very well. And my question is about some parallels between the plasticity first theory and gene cultural coevolution. Can you see some parallels or some similarity between these two approaches and two theories? Because as I can imagine, the gene cultural coevolution is also similar to this plasticity first theory. So because first some cultural traits arise, and then selection can act and can select some features, some alleles maybe, and I think there's some similarity between these two approaches. So
yeah. Exactly. If you take, for instance, modern niche construction theory, models are quite the same than the one that could be used in cultural evolution and co-evolution of genes and culture, because it would just be a specific case of plasticity. Culture could be treated as a specific case of plasticity that could be responsible for a new ecology. And also an aspect that I didn't mention at all in my talk is that most of these biologists thought that when plasticity was about, for instance, human ecology, then it could be the case that inheritance could be social and not only biological. And because of this kind of social, for instance, Baldwin himself, he developed a whole theory of social inheritance. And because of social inheritance, this could promote and enhance a lot the evolution of biological characters. So yes, there is a complete parallel between niche construction theory, organic selection, and co-evolution of genes and cultures. And I'm not a good specialist of what is going on today in cultural evolution, but at least some of these models are very directly derived from niche construction theory and the work of evolutionary geneticists in the 90s and early 20th century. So your intuition is completely grounded. And I am happy to learn that looking was very intuitive, because in reading just one paper of his scientific production, it was obvious to me, because he thought very in very clear terms, and he was able to address very specifically the issue. And in other papers of the 30s, the issue is less, is much more cryptic, to put it nicely. And even Schmalhausen, for instance, was very hard to read. If you have ever tried to read his book, Factors of Evolution, Schmalhausen is very difficult to understand. And in comparison, looking is much more easy to grasp. So I'm not surprised to learn that he was very intuitive. So my impression is that he reinvented organic selection without first any knowledge of the first debate and the literature. But thank you, and of course, again, thank you for providing some of these texts to me. Of course, it was absolutely vital to my work. Thank you again.
Laurent, thank you for your lecture.
Thank you very much. Lauren, there is one more question Sergey will ask you personally.
Okay, of course.
Discussion, because we need to free our audience for lunch. Sorry, time.
It's absolutely normal. So thank you again for your invitation. And of course, I wish you the best for the next session of the conference. Bye-bye.
You're to join us also for the next sessions. And all present, please, we will go on at what time? Sorry. We will go on with our lectures at 13:30. Yeah, at 13:30 with the lecture of Alexander Maestrenko. And now the break for lunch, please.